Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back. And today I'm going to be showing you guys the updated buncher head. So there's been some changes to this. After the last update there, I got some feedback about the head not working quite as well. So I kind of went in and I redesigned the whole idea of it because I wanted to kind of change it up to make it a little bit more usable for people. So the main introduction of this guy that's changed is I've created a system with, I'm calling it kind of like a spring plate, I guess. So I'm going to switch to collision mode so you can see what's going on underneath here. So what I've done is I've created this free-sitting spring piece right here. I'm just going to grab it and swing it here. So you can see this piece kind of slides up and down. So basically what this does is it's a spring pressure plate that creates pressure pushing against the tree itself. So one of the biggest problems that we had before, and I'm going to close the grapple here. I'll actually tilt it down so you can see. So every time you went to grab a tree, you can see there's a big gap here for where you grab the tree. And this is necessary if you want to be grabbing big bunches. But the problem is if you want to grab a single tree, it would cause a bit of a havoc because the tree wouldn't really be gripped tight by any of these claws because they can't close tight enough to crush the tree in there. So what would happen is when you went to do a grab, the tree would, a single tree would kind of slide around and float around, and sometimes it would actually pop out of these top forks here and be off to the side and off kilter, and it was a real pain in the butt if you were trying to bunch, especially if you just want to grab one or two trees. Sometimes they would flop around and slip out of the grab or go flying off, and it was annoying. So what this pressure plate does that was underneath here is it creates a constant pressure from the weight of that chunk being pushed against the base of the trees, which keeps them kind of stable inside the grapple. It also keeps them so that they're straight inside these forks without popping out. So I'm going to give you guys a quick example here. Oops, we're already running. There we go. So turn our head on. I played with the cut note a little bit and some other collisions to make it a little bit better. I mean, in the end, there's only so much you can really do with this thing to make it the way you want it. But as you can see, like when I'm moving it around, although it will have a little bit of sway, it's nowhere near what it had before, because what's happening is that plate is constantly putting pressure, and I can probably switch to it here. So this plate here is constantly applying pressure to the base of this tree, which is why it looks kind of pushed out a little bit. So it puts pressure out to keep it from, you know, sliding around, but it also keeps that pressure pushing the top into the forks on the top to keep the tree straight with the plane, which is actually really nice. And it really helps when you're doing bunches, especially on longer trees, because they don't flop out of the grapple and hang up on stuff. That was one of the biggest complaints I had, was when people were bunching, the trees would kind of flop side to side, and then when they went to do a swing, it would hook on the treetops of other trees. So let's just grab a couple here. The other thing that by having this plate does, I'll just grab, let's grab one more just to see if we can really jam it in there. There we go. So what this plate does, because that pressure is constantly being applied, it creates a natural pressure that kind of pushes the trees out. So another problem some people were reporting, and I saw some videos, if you're bunching smaller trees mixed with bigger trees, mixed with other sizes, sometimes people would get the trees jammed in there and it would be hard to drop them. You'd have to kind of shake the head or knock them out. So this pressure plate that's sitting back here, it's actually up here now because we have the thing fully loaded. It pushes the plate back, but it creates a weight pressure that pushes the trees out of the grapple. So when I go to drop them, they can't really get stuck because it automatically pushes them out of the head. So if we switch to this view, I can show you again kind of what's going on here. So this piece, like I said, because, oops, my head's a little too high here. There we go, or too low. Let's see if I can get under this guy. There we go. So this will go all the way back up until there's no pressure being applied at all because there's too many trees in there. But with that weight, it just kind of poof, and it pushes the trees and launches them out a little bit, but kind of at a nice slow pace where it's not going to shoot them. But it gives you a lot more comfortable grabs, a lot better control of the trees. So then when you do, you know, your big bunching runs, you can just grab a single tree if you want and be like, oh, you know what, I just want this one, and then you can go for a walk with it, you can do whatever you want, and it's not going to fly out of the head. Now you can shake it back and forth and it will wiggle a little bit in the top, but that pressure is always being applied to that tree so that it can't really launch out. This also works really well if you're doing ground grabs, because a lot of people, especially in multiplayer, you'd go to pick up a tree off the ground, and if you don't move like supersonically slow, it would just slide and launch into the next millennia. So now when you go to pick up a tree off the ground, that pressure, and I can again show you, that pressure plate is hitting the back of that tree to keep it tight on there. And now that tree, you can move it backwards, you can move it forwards, and you can see it's not sliding in or out of the grapple because of that pressure that's being applied. So now you can grab trees, drag them on the ground, push them back and forth with the grapple, and they won't go flying out of there, especially multiplayer, which was really bad in multiplayer. If a tree fell on the ground, it was like call the skidder, because there's no way you're going to be able to pick that up. So yeah, you can do, it's basically the same buncher head as you had before, just with that new feature. It makes it a little easier to bunch. With that pressure plate, it doesn't really affect the amount of trees you can grab, but I still recommend the max amount you put in here is 4, and these are pretty medium-sized trees, but I wouldn't go over 4. I mean, you can do whatever you want, it's entirely up to you, but 4 is the optimal amount you want to put inside the C350, because it is kind of built that way. And anything more than that, the game just doesn't really agree. It's very, very difficult for me as a modder to make a one-size-fits-all buncher head for all the trees. So by discovering this kind of plate system, it really does help me be more versatile in creating those grabs, especially if you got different sized trees. Because I remember playing on like Autumn Valley, where we have those tiny little birch trees mixed in with the bigger birch trees and the medium ones. And it was always a nightmare because you couldn't bunch out the small stuff with the big stuff, and it was really hard to bunch the small stuff by itself because it would slip out of the grapple and they'd go sideways and it'd be just a real pain in the butt. But again, now with that pressure system being constantly applied, it feels like that tree is gripped, even though my claws themselves, like if we go look at this angle, you can see my claws themselves are not actually gripping it. There's a lot of give in there. So like, oh, sorry, I can't really see that angle. Let's tilt her down just a teeny bit. So in here, you can see, like, see how much of a gap there is all the way around that log? So there's not actually any grip being touched on that log. It's all that pressure plate slamming down to the bottom and slamming it back into the top, and that's what keeps it straight. But it's really, really nice, especially on the longer, taller trees, because you can get a lot more control on it. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of introduce this because a lot of new people were having troubles keeping it from going kind of cockeyed in the head and being sideways and glitching out. And now it feels a lot smoother, and it should be a lot easier for most people. I'm not going to say it's like, you know, super anyone in the world can use it. You still have to have a certain skill level and have your control set up properly, because this is still, in my opinion, the advanced head compared to the C100, which just has the one set of claws on it. But I've done some testing with this guy in multiplayer with some of the other guys, and everybody seems to like it so far and said that it's a night and day difference over the last one that you guys are probably using right now, because there was some issues with weights and a couple other things there for keeping it. So yeah, I think you guys are really going to like this. I really enjoy it. And like I said, it's very stable. As you can see, it feels really, really stable. The logs sit well, and they launch out of there good. It just, yeah, it's a good one. The other thing that's going to be changing on this next update, not to go into all the details, I did get lots of people saying they were having troubles with the new weights. So the last weight system, or the current one that you guys are using, had a big weight change, but apparently the heads are a bit tippy. I didn't really look into that too far, but I have corrected that with the new one. So now you can actually fully extend your arm out without the head tipping. You should get a teeny bit of lean in your track, which I didn't want to get rid of it entirely. Like, I could technically make it so these things never lean at all ever and just stay straight, but I wanted to have like a tiny bit of feel. Like, I want it to feel like there is a little bit of weight on there. Like, see how the cab kind of tilts a little bit? And I mean, you're never going to get full 100% realism with the game's physics. That's just the way it's built. But I definitely agreed with people when they said, you know, if I put my head out to the side of my track, the whole machine shouldn't come collapsing over at full extent. So now you'll find the machines are a lot more stable. The other thing that I did with the new weight upgrades and tracks, they track amazingly well on pretty much all terrain now. Some people said they were having issues with them kind of stalling out while going up hills and stuff. Now they're pretty much at full torque. You can drive at any angle, whatever you want. The other issue people ran into was the tracks turning. So what would happen is, because there's so much torque in those tracks, when you went to track left or track right, it would kind of almost flop it a bit. Like it would feel like the whole machine kind of like, to give you an example, it felt like it kind of like lifted like a little bit like that, like a quick jerky kind of lift every time you went to turn left or right. So what I've done is I've just made the rotation speed on the tracks a little bit less sensitive. So you might notice when you're trekking, you have to, like, you might not turn as sharply as quickly. You still can turn sharp. Like if you keep holding right, you can turn pretty much on a dime if you want, but it does take a little bit longer to engage, and that's strictly just to keep a solid control of it. But as you can see, like, there's no problems trekking in and out of this dirt was the biggest problem, because the tires actually get lower. Here, I'll show you guys something pretty funny too. So this type of ground is like a field ground, I guess. So what happens is they tried to make, like Giants, when they made the game, they try to make it realistic-ish by having the tracks themselves go into the dirt a bit. And I never figured out how they did that. I thought the ground was just lower when you put that texture. But what they actually do is this ground triggers the tires, which are these big orange circles here. They trigger the tires to become smaller. So watch this. As I drive into them, see how the tires start to kind of get smaller? So you can see the white circles and the orange circles as I drive out, they get big again. Bloop, 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 bloop. And then as I drive back into the dirt, they get smaller. So me as a modder, I had no idea what was going on, especially in the last update where people were saying, when I go to trek up a hill, it's my buncher's getting stuck and I don't know why. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense because the tires are fine. But then I started playing on Enders for a bit, and I have a whole bunch of these pockets of this type of ground all over the place. So what was happening is I would drive in, and I'd have like half the track in the mud and then half the track out, and the whole machine would start rocking back and forth, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? So what was happening was the actual tires themselves were shrunk on one side, what was in the mud, but they were fully sized in the other. So then the ratio from the spring and the suspension was bouncing it back and forth, and it was kind of a nightmare. So I fixed that now so that you can pretty much drive on whatever terrain you want. It still sinks into the ground like it's supposed to, at least the way Giants has it set up. But now you can trek through it. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't catch. It doesn't hang up on anything. And like I said, this thing will pretty much go anywhere you want it to. I mean, I'm sure you guys will find a spot somewhere where you can make it where it doesn't trek, but I have yet to find that spot. Because like I said, it seems to trek over any landscape. Now, granted, by doing this, it does cut the realism a little bit because, you know, if you're going up a hill this steep, you shouldn't be able to Velcro to the side of the hill. A lot of cases in real life, machines slip and slide and fall down hills, but to try to imitate those type of physics on this game is very, very difficult. And with the weights that I have to balance out with the logs, it's also very difficult. The tricky part for me is I want to give you guys an experience that is fun and at the same time slightly realistic to try to have a little bit more fun on it, but it's really hard to balance the two with this type of physics engine because the logs run on their own plan and the trees run on their own, or the machine's tracks run on their own plan. It's really hard to balance it all out to give you an optimal experience, but I have addressed all the issues that people have brought up since the last update, meaning, you know, now it treks anywhere, you can drive anywhere, it never stops, the tracks kind of roll good. It's very, very balanced, so the weights are really good. You know, it's not tippy like it was. You know, you can do full extensions. Well, I think I can on this hill. My tires are in the ground, so we'll see if it tips. I don't think it will, though. No. See, but I wanted it to have lean. Like, I want it to have a little bit of lean, because in real life, machines have a bit of lean. So as I lift, like, a heavy thing off the ground at full extension, the machine should go up a little bit. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you can go watch videos on YouTube for hours with machines doing far reaches, and you'll see there is tip there, but it's nowhere near what it was before, so I think you guys will have a little bit more of a smoother experience what machine you're using. But yeah, anyway, that's just a quick kind of rundown on some of the stuff I fixed in the new updates. There's new mods and new updates and fixes and stuff coming as well. So keep an eye on the patch notes when the release does come out at the end of the month, because I'll have a big pile of stuff going on there as well. But I just want you guys to know I am looking at all the stuff you guys are mentioning, and I have addressed a lot of the issues to make it a better experience for all of you, and I hope you guys are going to like the next update. So yeah, we'll catch you guys then, and have a good one. See ya.